Hello and welcome to my series of conversations with Stalwarts of Music. Today's episode is being partnered with Perpetual Buzz Experiences. It's an artist representation company with three very basic but lofty goals. They are the launchpad for indie musicians. They help them leverage their success to produce some of the most memorable musical experiences. And they also help generate funding for social causes and make sure that musicians have a good time in the process. Be sure to check them out on www.perpetualbus.com. We have yet another podcast partner for today, which is Wire Up Music Store, which is a music retail store selling state-of-art equipment ranging from guitars to ukulele to percussive instruments and classical instruments. Do check out their Instagram page, which goes by the handle @wireup.india. And if you're in Bangalore, hop into their outlet in Koramangala. My guest today is a two-time Grammy Award-winning bassist who has been touring and recording for more than 3 decades. His first step into the national spotlight came in 1991 when he became the founding member of the Aquarium Rescue Unit. That led to his membership on the classic rock group, the Allman Brothers, quite a legendary group of all time. Over the years, Oteil has shared the stage with musicians like Carlos Santana, Buddy Guy, Taj Mahal, Billy Gibbons, John Mayer, to name a few. He received a Lifetime Achievement Award for his 15-year musical stint with the Allman Brothers Band. Without any further ado, I'm delighted to welcome my guest for today, Oteil Burbridge.
Hey
Hi,
there.
how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Very well, very well. Which part of the world are you in right now?
I'm in California right now and
Oh, wonderful.
not far from San Francisco.
I believe you're doing you're on a tour right now. Are you?
Yeah, we just had opening night
Uh-huh.
of the tour last night in
Wonderful.
Los Angeles at Dodger Stadium.
Oh, lovely. How did that go?
It went really well. Really,
Uh-huh.
really well.
Great.
Yeah.
So let's get started with our agenda for today. I have a couple of interesting questions for you.
Sure, sure. It's thank you for having me. I really
Likewise, it's an
appreciate it.
absolute pleasure. I'd say it's more of a privilege to be having you as part of this entire series. I've been
Oh
really
man.
been talking to AJ for quite some time now to sort of have you on board, but we finally made it happen. I'm so glad.
Yeah. A privilege is all mine, man.
Great. So can you try and explain to our audience what does music do for you? What does music exactly
Mm.
give you? Music is your life in so many different levels and dimensions, and in many ways, in more pure terms than it's for most people, you're recognized, celebrated, applauded as a musician who's still upholding the purest values of its tradition. What does music gift you? I know it's a pretty difficult question to sort of answer, but could you try to verbalize this in the best possible way?
Yeah, wow, that's such a big question.
Mhm.
You know, um, music is goes precedes my earliest memories. Because my mom, when she was pregnant with us, this is 1964.
Oh wow.
So she used to put headphones on her stomach when she
Mm.
was pregnant with us and play whatever they were listening to, which, my dad's only religion was music and probably primarily jazz. And but he had a wide ranging collection, and she played all that stuff. So you know, before I even had actual ears, you know, I could. It's given me everything. It has coincided with you know the actual act of me coming to life, and so that was a great gift. I could say even that my parents gave me that music also gave me, by giving me the gift of music. And then I started playing when I was five. it's been with me since the beginning. I started playing drums. I'm really a drummer. I was originally a drummer, and I didn't pick up the bass guitar till I was 14 years old, and got serious about it at probably 17. And but it's always been a source of pleasure because, but when my dad would play records, I mean, he was very reverent uh, towards uh, music and musicians specifically, and composers. So it's not like nowadays where kids, ask Alexa or whatever to play a song, and if I put on my song, they don't want to hear it. They're like, "Cut that off." I could never imagine saying that to my father. And I heard a lot of really good music because of that. And that was a great gift also because he was into such great music that it put me ahead of the game. I took it for granted. That was just what it sounded like growing up in my house. I mean, he played classical Indian music and all kinds, not just jazz. Um, and then, because I started playing early, 5 on drums, we all played violin, we all played piano. My brother obviously played flute also. Um, it gives you a hobby that's, which you do just for fun, which I still do primarily do it for fun, even though I also do it for a career. Um, it also gave me a um, reason to be disciplined, which I always found reasons to not be. And but it was fun and it was compelling, and seeing these musicians that were playing at such a high level, you knew it wasn't easy. Like, you can't listen to Charlie Parker or Zakir Hussein and go, "Oh, well, I could do that." Like, it's going to take serious to even be able to comprehend what they're doing. It's going to take some serious commitment and discipline and commitment. You know, um, so and now it's my career, so it's providing for me and my family, my wife and children. Uh, so it's given me everything. I mean, I probably should think of like what it hasn't given me. That'd probably be a shorter answer.
Fair enough. You did grow up in Washington D.C., if I'm not wrong.
Yes, that's where I was born.
Yeah. So speaking of the city, I'm sure it molded the musician you are today. But I have something interesting in terms of cuisine. What's a more essential dining experience? Would it be right to say that it'd be the best bet to sort of have some of the finest dining experiences at a place like Martin's Tavern, or would it be a casual dining experience at Ben's Chili Bowl? Which one would you pick of the two?
I don't know. You know what's funny? I probably wouldn't pick either because my two favorite types of food are Indian food and Thai food. So I'd probably be going to get Indian food
Lovely.
in Washington D.C. or Thai food, but I I do like it all. I'm not a chili guy, but so much because it upsets my stomach, not because I don't like it. But as I get older, I have to take some things out. Fortunately, I can still eat Indian food. But yeah, I bounce around a lot, and DC's a great place to eat. Like, you know, I would say it's apples and oranges. Like, you could pick what you want out of those two, but I would be going to get, it's probably Thai food or Indian food.
Nice. You did speak of listening to Indian classical music while growing up, and you have
Yes.
a very special connection with India. Your daughter happens to be from our
Yes.
country. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience being in India? If you were inspired by musical forms during your time here, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I didn't get to see any music while I was there. It was a very stressful time uh, going to get Kavi. So me and my wife were hyper focused on that and all the legal hoops that you have to jump through. And the poor thing was so scared of us, you know. Oh, she's so brave. And so we were just trying to figure out how to not traumatize her and also jump through all these really difficult legal hoops. It took us actually 2.5, it was a 2.5 year process.
My goodness.
But I've been so inspired by Indian music since I was a young child because my dad always listened to classical Indian music. So we heard Ravi Shankar and Alaraka, and we heard Zakir Hussain and Ali Akbar Khan, and you know, we heard. Now my dear friend Pete Lavazzoli turned me on to Kishore,
Okay.
which I was the only thing that Kavi, if I put it on in the car, she doesn't make me turn it off. She said, I hate that. I put it on one morning and she didn't say anything. And then I looked back in the mirror and she was looking out the window. I was like, yeah, you know? So, but when we were there, it was amazing for me because it was my first time going there. And it was my wife's first time. And we've both traveled a fair amount, but we had never been to India. My brother had been a number of times. And it's just so amazing. I can't wait to go back and to bring Kavi back. And the whole culture, you know, obviously we heard music while we were there in the hotels and just around. And what was going? There was like something where they release a lot of balloons, or they look like flags or something, but they were
Kites? Are you talking about the kites?
kites. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
All these kites. When we were in Lucknow, we were
Yeah.
like, "Honey, come look! The kites are all over the place." I mean, the whole thing was just amazing, very inspiring. I have a friend, Shovik Dutta, that he works with John McLaughlin, but he also grew up uh, like in the same neighborhood, I believe, with the Husseins, with Zakir Hussain. And so he knows all them. So he's like, you know, when you go back next time and you don't have to jump through all these hoops, let me take you around. I was like, yes, please. Yes, please. Triple yes, please. It was a magic time. We were there for about 2 weeks and I think what what was starting then? It wasn't Diwali. There was a big festival started and all the women were doing the henna.
The Dashera?
Something.
Are you talking about the Dashera?
I can't. I thought I recognized the name of it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I've just horribly unprepared when it comes to that. But yeah, everything. It was such a great experience, you know, because all these things were happening, and it was really wondrous, very inspiring, and inspiring to me musically because just to actually be there and really feel, you know, it's one thing to listen to records, but it's another thing to be there and feel what, you know, the ground that it comes up out of. It was really, really intense.
Speaking of Lucknow, did you try the kebabs there? Lucknow is known for its kebabs.
You know, I was being extremely conservative in my eating
Okay.
because normally when I travel anywhere,
Yeah.
My stomach gets very upset.
Sure.
Because people use different kinds of oil
Yeah.
in their cooking. It's just different. And so I'm always like hyper. And then when we went to India, I was like, I started eating my food hotter because I can't take really hot, but I love flavorful spices and a wide variety of them. So I started eating my food a lot hotter just to prepare myself. And man, when I got there, breakfast. I was like, whoa. So I was being very conservative. Next time I go, though, I'm just going to go for it because,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But the food that I had, yeah, everywhere was. We started out in Allahabad, which I think
Yeah.
did they change the name? Prayagraj.
Yeah, yeah, Prayagraj. Yeah,
Prayagraj.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think they changed it back or something like that. But we started there, and then Lucknow, and
yeah.
then yeah, it was really back to Delhi. It was something.
Lovely.
And Kavi is amazing. I got to send you some pictures of her.
Yeah, yeah, for
She's
sure. Feel free to.
so beautiful, man.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you uh, came down to India, and it was so thoughtful of you to do something like this. Probably showing her an all new experience of being with the family and all of that. That's a
Yeah. Oh,
great thing.
I wish I was super rich. I would adopt so many more children, you know? But she really is. She's amazing to see. My phone made this thing where it's kind of scary that AI did this. It was tugging at my heartstrings so easily. Um, but it made a video by itself of from when we
Hmm.
went to pick her up
Oh,
in
lovely.
Allahabad till right now. And so I had the music playing and I saw her progression. She was really scared of me. Like
Okay.
I would just bust out crying if I made eye contact with her. So
Hmm.
to see, going from that to the first time she reaches up and wants me to pick her up, and she's a total daddy's girl now, and it's really it's one of the top three most amazing things of my life for sure.
Lovely, lovely. Is she into music as well? Are you also introducing her to some modern
Yes.
musical forms?
Well, she chooses what she wants, which
Right.
is just terrible a lot of the time. But you can't.
Yeah.
They get it from school, but I do play a lot of stuff, and then my friends are musicians, so they come by the house and they rehearse.
All right.
And she loves this book. My friend Brad Miller, a great bass player,
Right.
great bassist, uh, plays with Patrick Bartley and all these guys. Um, but he gave her a little children's book called Charlie Parker Plays Bebop.
Oh, wow.
And so she loves the sound of that word, bebop. And so I read her the book and then I play her bebop, and I play her all kinds of music. She actually tends to play the instruments more than my son. She
Mhm.
gets on the drum. She might be my little drummer, which I would just love. Oh,
Yeah,
I
we're
would
really
just,
looking forward to see that.
if
What are you
she's,
What are you guys going to call yourselves?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm sure they'll come up with the perfect name. They're so creative, man. And she loves. I'll send you some pictures of her like playing the piano. She gets into it. She's like, and she plays my drums a lot. I brought Nigel a little drum kit. It's a
Okay.
Pearl.
Oh,
It's a
wow.
nice drum set. Oh, let me put this do not disturb on. Jeez, sorry, I forgot to do that. Where is it? Do not disturb. All the stuff's coming through. Um, yeah, I bought this little drum kit for Nigel, but she
Mhm.
gets on it more than him.
Yeah.
You know, I think he doesn't do it because I want him to. So then I just back off. I'm like, all right.
In one of your interviews, you'd quoted about human experience that charts the same path as a sine wave, right?
Yeah.
So, speaking of the ups and downs in life, before we come to the downs, which in some ways, for most of us, is quite tempting to talk about, what are some of the most gratifying moments of your musical pursuit?
Oh man, when we all come together, there's just some, as you know, from Indian musical tradition, which has this improvisation when everybody syncs up together,
Yeah.
and then it just feels like you could kind of take your hands off the wheel
Mhm.
and it's just a magical feeling. A lot of times for me, it's in a certain groove. Like me and my brother, we could just always get into a groove just like that. It was just, if we hadn't played together in forever, it's just like a chemical reaction. And a lot of that is chemistry, which is just a blessing. You can't practice that in. You can't, like, some people just get together and it's more magical than when they get together with other people. And that's just that, you know? So that's one of my most fulfilling things, is just when it all comes together like that. Because this joy comes out of it, you know? And and then the other part is probably the down part, being able to, like, uh work through or maybe use painful feelings and emotions to, as a kind of fuel to, like, get it out, and maybe that helps some other people who are going through that pain, or some other kind of pain. We could kind of connect up in our pain, and then lift each other up out of it, because you have to feel it. So it's just easier if you go through it together, you know. Um, so that's like, that's probably my favorite thing. I'd say a lot recently, like, I either want extreme joy out of music or exorcism. You know, like, to get the pain and the demons and all dark things, just like, get it out. All right, it's in there. Come on, let's move it. Let's move it like clouds, like storm clouds move. Like, it can't just sit there in you, you know, because it could kill you. But if you can let it move like storm clouds, you know, and just pass through it.
So from what I gauge, you're a very optimistic, and you've got a very positive approach towards music.
Well,
That
to music, yeah.
Yeah. That being said, I'd like to know a little bit about your personal discipline. Also, are you also a self-motivated person when it comes to other things apart from music?
I don't know. I don't feel like I am, compared to other people who I see that are very driven.
Mhm.
But I guess that I am about certain things. I guess just, I'm motivated more by inspiration, which tends to wax and wane. Excuse me. It's like they say, oh, you should write some every day, or you should. I don't do those kinds of things. Like, and I'm not against it philosophically. Of course, if you compose something every day, whether it's good, bad, whatever, you're just doing something every day, something, it's going to bear some kind of fruit. But I'm not as disciplined in that way. I'm more motivated by inspiration. And when I get inspired, or I find something new, or discover something new, or just feel, and that kind of waxes and wanes, that's like clouds too. Um, but I also tend to get, I do rabbit hole things. So, but again, that's just, I don't know, is that obsessive? Being obsessive? Just enough. I'm just obsessive enough to where it's not unhealthy, if I turn it towards music. So when I get going, I do kind of go deeper into it. But I feel like typically I would write more in the wintertime, because when it got cold, I was shut in more. Now that we live in Florida, we don't have any wintertime. So I'm just out on my bike or in the pool all the time. But I'm doing some writing, you know, just the cycle's different now. So I don't know if I can be objective enough to really answer that question. I don't feel very self motivated to compare to some people that I idolize.
I'd like to touch upon Dead and Company.
Yeah.
You play alongside some of the finest musicians as part of this group, which includes John Mayer, Bob. Uh, if I were to take the three of you, for example, three of you have very distinct voices when it comes to your respective instruments. And all three of you have definitely set in a benchmark of being musical heroes for a lot of us, in terms of your musicality and the technical
Thank you.
virtuosity and all of that you display. How do you make sure that each individual gets enough spotlight while playing together in terms of an artistic expression point of view? How do you guys go about it?
Well, I think that's in terms, and I've been very lucky in this way, um, with both Dead and Company and the Allman Brothers Band, where that's baked into the cake. That's part of the founding philosophy of the bands, is this, you know, all for one and one for all. Like every part of it is just as important. They don't see a hierarchy in these things. Now it happens with people where they're just, that's what people do. People want a king, so and natural leaders do tend to just come forward, like Jerry Garcia. People would just tend to follow him. I don't think he could really help it, And the same with Dwayne Allman. Like he just was a natural leader. But in their minds, in Dwayne's mind and in Jerry's mind, it was a level playing field, and each piece was just as important. There wasn't a hierarchy. And so you find, and because it's improvisational music also, so the whole thing is based on each person's uniqueness, and that's the recipe. Each person is a different spice, and that's the recipe, and you mix it together, and that's this distinct flavor. And I'm really lucky to be able to have that, especially as a bassist. Where bassists are, they want you to stay down there, and let us all walk on you, which is great. It's great to be the floor, because it's an amazing sense of power to hold everything up, and also be part of the rhythmic engine to drive things with the drummers, um, but also to be able to be free improvisationally,
Mhm.
melodically, chordally, harmonically, uh, rhythmically, in all these different ways, and to be able to add that in there. I mean, you don't want to be just trying to pull all the spotlight to yourself,
Yeah.
but Phil Lesh has a really beautiful thing that man whose spot I'm sitting um, in his band, he doesn't want a soloist.
Mhm.
He's like, you're not taking a solo. He says, when the improvisation comes, we're all improvising, almost like Dixieland, where everybody's soloing together, but they're all weaving, you know, it's all like counterpoint.
Yeah.
Um, so that's how you do it. That's the way it's set up to do it that way. And I'm really super blessed to have fallen into yet another situation like that. Because I don't think that's so common in rock and roll, you know, if that's what we're doing. I guess we are.
So we have a lot of fans who've tuned in from India and other parts of the world.
Nice.
They are interested to know a couple of anecdotes from your touring experience with probably the top two at the top of your head, probably with Dead and Company or Allman Brothers, something that you cherish for the rest of your life, a fond memory of sorts.
Man, there's so many,
Mhm.
you know. Um, I guess one of my a really distinct memory for me is the first night playing with the Allman Brothers Band.
Mhm.
We were in like Great Woods Amphitheater
Okay.
in Boston. This was June of 1997.
Oh, wow.
And
I was 3 years
what was I?
old then.
Huh?
I was just 3 years old then.
Yeah, I'm old. I'm getting up there. I was 32 then.
Alright.
And I had played some of the amphitheaters before with the Horde Tour with Colonel Bruce Hampton and the Aquarium Rescue Unit.
Oh, wow.
We had gone out and done some of those amphitheaters with Fish and Blues Traveler and Widespread Panic and Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. But the Allman Brothers started in 1969, so
Mhm.
I was 5 years old when that band started. So being on stage with them, even though I had played that amphitheater before, it was like, whoa. And we started out like their very first album starts with Don't Want You No More, Cross to Bear. So it felt like, I don't know, it was like time traveling because, I was really getting into those records and trying to put myself back then in 69, and then we started with that. And it was just surreal. I can remember it very clearly. Uh, it was very surreal, and it honestly felt like that right up until the end. Whenever we played that, we do Cross to Bear, and I just felt like ghosts were rising up, going, "Thank you." you know, it was, you just get some of those moments like that, and then many, many times just on the bus traveling, laughs that we were having on the bus, you know. Um, with Dead and Company, man, there's a bunch. There's a bunch of moments. There's certain places that to me are kind of magical, and Alpine Valley is one of those. And when we played Alpine Valley, it just had a very mystical feeling. Also, when we played Eugene, Oregon, it's like really, what did we call them? Old growth forest deadheads, the really old deadheads and merry pranksters who still live up there, up in the woods and stuff, farming and stuff, and they came down and you could feel the difference. It just was more sacred, you know, it was heavier and just beautiful, you know. And we've had such funny times, when you're playing this kind of music. Like, all kinds of things are going to happen, and it's baked into the cake with all the LSD and everything. So there's no intent to keep things on the rails. Like you're hoping it just goes whoop, and all of a sudden just takes a left or whatever, and it will. It definitely will. It's always a joy. I guess I love that. I love that about the band that we could still get that. We had some really good improvisations just last night, like
Mhm.
on Uncle John's band. You know, like every night is an opportunity to really hit some new thing. I mean, it's always right now that's the coolest. You know?
You did mention the entire experience was similar to that of a mystical. You didn't mention the fact.
Yeah.
Uh, Speaking of the mystical, does it also create proclivity of interest on certain other aspects of the mystical for someone like you?
Oh yeah. But I would say that was at the same time as music. I've always had dreams where I dream into the future
Mhm.
since I was a child. So I've always had a weird, like something else is going on. And my mom was totally comfortable with that. And this very super psychic and super mystical. And my dad was the exact opposite. I was like, Dad, you don't believe in anything mystical? He's like, no. I said, well, what about Mom? He goes, well, all I know is people shouldn't mess with your mother. I was like, oh man, come on. You can't have it both ways, man. Like he knew. So I've always seen it over and over and over again. And if something continues to happen over and over again, whether I can explain it or not, or prove it or not, or whatever scientifically, I don't care because it keeps happening, you know? Like I can't scientifically prove the existence of love. So is love not important to me? Like love is the most mystical thing of all to me. So I which means hate is also mystical, but that's not the trip I want to go on. But yeah, I've totally to me they're all like everything's interconnected. And I think that's why I suspect that's why a lot of things are so messed up now is because they're so disconnected and we're not seeing the connections between everything and and then because of seeing it, allowing them and fostering them and cultivating them, right? I wonder, do we really have a competition for resources or do we have a competition for the control of resources? I don't know, but I suspect it's just a competition for the control of it because I have to think with all of our collective mind power, if that was being fostered, if we made education a priority, the poorest kid might turn out to be the smartest one to solve the whole thing. So, yeah, to me, the mystical is everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. Without it, music is what is it? What is it? What is it, music without that mysterious thing that affects your heart and your intellect and your spirit and you know, it can make you smile, or cry. Like what is that without the mystical? So I don't to me it's all that's the number one, you know? Cuz music is not even number 1 for me. Like it's obviously I've dedicated and built my whole life around it, but like the most important thing to me is what my wife and kids think of me or feel about me. Um, and that's this is older me now. I'm 57 now, so my priorities have changed since I was younger. But that's the most important thing to me is love and how we can. I really think it would fix things, but we don't allow it to happen. Yeah.
You also spoke a little bit about spirituality. I'm quite intrigued to know more about your series, The Wanderer, which was focused on religious and spiritual musings. I read about it somewhere.
Mm, sounds like I need to pick back up on that. Most people don't want to hear that stuff. But to me, I'm just fascinated with it. Like, I'm fascinated by uh, all religions. You know, I had to break through a a built-in hostility towards Christianity and Judaism that I got from my parents because they grew up Catholic and rejected it. It was not a good experience for them at that time and place. Um, so part of that was like, okay, going 180 degrees on that. Now, okay, like let's look at it uh, from a different perspective. Like just wipe the slate clean and start over. And then that brought me deeper into other ones. Well, actually, I could say the Book of the Tao. I started reading more before the Bible, but then when I really got started finding theology in the Christian and Jewish traditions that did resonate with me, it reconnected me with the Book of the Tao, and then I went to Bhagavad Gita. I've branched out into everything because I just like to see how people around the world create this thing. Have you ever heard of Alex and Allison Gray? They're visionary artists.
Not
They
really.
they have a place in um, upstate New York. It's a
Right.
beautiful property. They're visual artists that are just amazing. You got to check them out. Alex and Allison Gray,
Yeah.
Grey.
Were they part of this reality show, if I'm not wrong? They did a couple of stuff together
I'm not
in terms of
sure.
visual art.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure because I don't watch much TV. I'm
Right.
all on the internet,
Yeah. It
But
did sound quite familiar. Yeah.
they have a amazing painter.
Yeah.
It's like the most intense stuff you've
Yeah.
ever seen, and but they have this concept where to them, making art, is a form of worship, right? Or prayer, or
Mhm.
however you want to look at it. It's their way of doing religion
Yeah.
is to make art. And they said this one thing that just hit the nail on the head for me. I saw them on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they said people, when they look, there's different ways to look at these books that these religions are centered around. He said, we look at them as primarily works of art. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh, of course. They're stories, poems, songs, parables, letters. Uh, I was like, oh, these are all works of art. They're writing arts. And so now we could try to go look at it like in a very rigid way. But when you look at it as a work of art, it's like, oh, yeah, now it's like everything doesn't have to be literally true. It's like, it doesn't matter as like, did Adam and Eve happen? What matters is, does Adam and Eve happen? And then when you read these stories and you go, oh, there's me. Oh, I did that. Oh, yeah, I got me that way. And it's like, so now Star Wars and Harry Potter is just as sacred to me as any Bible of anywhere. It's like, is it true? It doesn't matter if wizards actually exist,
Mhm.
but is it true what they're talking about? And that to me is super compelling. And then when you see how everybody does it all the way around the world, then you find the big truths that we all have in common, and they all come back to this one thing, I think. So, uh, the ego having to be reined in at least, at a minimum, uh, love, compassion, service, sacrifice, uh, acceptance, radical acceptance, hyper radical acceptance. you know, um, these are the things that I find. That's what keeps me going, and it matters because people are dying every day. The pandemic caused a lot of people to just tap out and commit suicide. The richest, most famous,
Yeah.
most creative, most beautiful people kill themselves all the time. All the time. So you can't tell me it's not important. It's important for our very survival and for not to us just to survive, but also to thrive. You know, but to me, God is love, and love wants us to thrive, just like the planet, like this huge garden, just springtime, just an explosion, all these different species of insects and animals and plants, and just that's that's the point. That's what can happen if we don't thwart it, and if we don't like lose touch with our love and compassion and reason to sacrifice and the mystical reasons. To me, that's what it's all about, and music helps people do that. It helps get them in touch with like that. Boom, it brings you right to it. That's something I don't know why. Can't prove it scientifically, but I know, it's feeding my whole family. Um,
So, what are some of the spiritual techniques that you embody that has helped you in terms of your music? Because lot of us want to know what are some of the spiritual techniques that someone could possibly get into, uh, which might help them propagate their music in some capacity.
well, I feel like everything in life is spiritual, and it could be good spirits or bad spirits. It's like a radio dial. It's like what you tune into. You know, so it could be as simple as eating more healthy.
Right.
That's a spiritual thing because now I'm cultivating a healthier body. I'm loving myself more, you know, by doing that. Um, but also, in improvisational music, you have this trance element where you get in a groove and then you get in this trance, and that's a spiritual thing. And a lot of times I find like when I'm in a groove, like the groove itself will teach me, you know,
Mhm.
it will, my hands want to go certain ways. Sometimes I just have to get them in the groove and then, sit back and learn, you know. Um, Finding a mentor, uh, that whole relationship, like finding a person and they have to accept you and it's a mutual thing. That's a deeply spiritual thing.
Yeah.
Um, keeping a state of mind that's open, a state of heart that's open mind, open heart, open spirit, uh, to see things a different way. I play a game with myself a lot, especially with politics, religion, anything myself. It's just to take the opposing viewpoint. It's like a prosecutor and a defender in court.
Mhm.
So just to see, I'm like, especially with theology, you go, okay, I'll say this belief is true. What if I just turn it 180 degrees? Now, what is that? That's why a lot of the spiritual, the most important spiritual uh, practices or truths that you could put in practice are really simple. They're just kind of binary. Love, hate, light, dark, up, down, hot, cold. You know what I mean? If you do this, this is going to happen. If you do that, that's going to happen. You pick it. Like, it's your choice. You can do whatever you want. And here's what's going to happen if you choose this way. And here's what's going to happen if you choose that way. Now, what if I'm like, so maybe something happened to me that hurt me really bad. It makes me want to choose this other way that's not going to turn out good, even though I know intellectually it's not going to turn out good. And yet the hurt still overrides my intellect. Okay, what do I do then? All right. That's when this stuff becomes very meaningful and very useful and very important and very practical. Not so esoteric and out here like super, just practical to help me keep my mind open and loving and my heart open and loving and my spirit open and loving and my body healthy. You know, um, I don't know if that answers your question. Now I'm going all the way around the mountain here, but
No, you did answer a considerable bit as to what approaches could be taken and what are the possibilities around it.
yeah, because you could go in I mean, you could be dropped anywhere on the planet and find some old person that's lived a long time, seen it happen every kind of way, and they go, yeah, they can really help you. That's why I believe America is in such danger, like because it's a youth worshiping culture,
Yeah.
you know. And I'm all for like some old people need to go and let's have a fresh start with things. in our government. But but it's there's so much to be learned. There's so much that you learn. The older you get, the more you realize, like, wow, I'm glad I lived this long enough to realize this and that and see this and that happen. So I'll be able to help my kids.
Right. You embody some of the highest aspirations and accolades any musician would or could possibly have. You did all of this without learning how to read music formally, from what I've understood. Right? How essentially do you think it is for anyone to read and understand music in a formal sense?
um, well, I did read music when I was younger, and then I just ceased to use it because I wasn't in like studio situations or in a classical setting
Mhm.
or somewhere, places that I would have to read notation all the time, like big band. So I always recommend to my students that they learn to read.
Mhm.
Obviously, um, I can speak. People learn to speak before they learn to read. Kavi's learned a lot, without knowing all the names of what a pronoun and an adjective and all that stuff is. And she's doing just great, So you can communicate. And I think a lot of times about like old blues musicians, some of whom did not know how to read, but they knew so many lyrics. And they knew many, many lyrics, different versions of the same song.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I heard this verse over here in Memphis, and they have this verse in Augusta, Georgia. And, there's like, they have encyclopedic knowledge of verses, but they didn't actually know how to read and write. But I think it's a very good thing. The danger for me is where someone could read it like and not understand conceptually what's happening. So I could transcribe a solo. I know, I can analyze what's happening, but I might not see the bigger concepts that are being used. Like I'm just now learning these triad pairs and stuff and really diving deeper into diminished harmony, which is just like it's like a DNA helix. I feel like I'm, you know. Uh, so I want to be able to understand. I want to be able to zoom out and see the big picture and see conceptually, like a composer would see things, and not just where like I'm reading it and playing it. Like I had an interesting experience in a studio one time. I was doing something where I knew there was going to be some unison licks that were complex. And so I told the guy before he even hired me, I was like, I don't read music, but if you just give me a minute, I can, I have a system where I use to learn it. He was like, no problem. So I was on this session with some guys that could really read well. And so we got to this part, and of course, my insecurities. I was just like, hey, I'm going to need a minute to get this down. He's like, no problem. So he worked with the other players on the line. And I took it and I just divided into like big chunks. So I think I had 3 or 4 chunks. I just learned this piece,
Yeah.
and then I learned that piece, and I sewed the first 2 together, and then I learned the third piece, and I sewed and I played, and then I got it. And I ended up actually getting it before the guys that were reading it, because when I learned the inflection for every line from the get-go.
Right.
They did it the other way. They learned the line and then had to learn the inflection along the way, which took them longer to learn because some of it I don't really think can be written out, right? Which I think is different in the Indian system, if
Right.
I'm not mistaken.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And probably for that reason, and I was like, wow, I did it faster than the guys that could read.
Mm.
But I used a different process because I learned that inflection first from the get go all the way down. And then I had it. When it's time to do it, I had it. So that was an interesting experience. But there's value in both approaches, and I think people should just learn both. I just because I've been in a more like honestly, you're helping me see this right now for the first time. Glad I've lived long enough to realize this. I've been in more of a folk music arena than a classical, which I would include jazz in,
Yeah.
because I've been playing more rock and roll. Like even with Colonel Bruce, we were doing bluegrass and Delta blues and some funk rock, jazz-ish stuff, but it was really rooted in the old folk music. And that all that stuff is just communicated musician to musician, people sitting around in a circle in the fireplace in the around the fire or whatever. Like it's just a community orally transmitted thing. Um, and that's why I haven't really read music, but I like complex music, so I have to learn like, okay, what is this? And I like composing, so I like to understand harmony and how it works. I'm just again lazy and undisciplined. you know,
Could you
I don't
tell?
recommend it.
Mhm, mhm. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about the musical education-based app that you had put out? It's called the Ozone App.
Yes,
Yeah. Would you wanna like share a brief summary about everything about the application and where can they find it and things like that?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, I need to. I should have done this before. Hold on, because I want to make sure I have uh, the right URL
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
It's I think it's join the Ozone VIP.
All right.
I'll make sure and find.
Yeah.
But yeah, we basically a friend of mine, Jimmy Rector,
Mm-hmm.
who is a drummer and also like a computer and math wizard. He came to me about doing this educational app, and we call it the Ozone. If you put my name in Oteil in the Ozone, it will come up in the App Store. Um, and basically, I teach the system that I use to learn how to play bass guitar because I did have formal training on drums and played in a classical setting. So it was all reading rudiments. I played bass clarinet, piano.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did that route that was the classical route, but on drums is when I shifted over into studying jazz,
Right.
and then when I picked up bass guitar, it was just for fun. So there was no. I was like, I don't want lessons. I don't want. This is just. I want to play only the music I want to play, and I just want to do it for fun, so I could play with my older brother. And so basically, what he taught me, I was very lucky because my brother had perfect pitch. They discovered it when he was 7 years old.
Oh wow.
So he just raced ahead. Now I thought he was normal because he's just my older brother. I was 4 at the time. I guess they discovered he had perfect pitch. So trying to keep up with him gave me really good relative pitch. And he always said, until he died, he was like, I think having good relative pitch is more important than having perfect pitch.
Perfect. Yeah.
Um, but I always thought, well, when you have perfect pitch, you have both. So, but maybe not necessarily. I don't know. Um, I would think you would get it automatically if you had perfect pitch, like it would be included under the umbrella, of perfect pitch. But I got really good relative pitch, and so I realized if I could put three things together, that I could learn just about anything. I could slow it down enough, or my brain speed up enough to figure it out, and I could also communicate it to others. And so that's what my Ozone app is based on, this system of merging these three things. One is the sound of the interval. The second is the shape, like what it's going to look like on
Yeah.
the guitar neck, which on bass is tuned in fourth, so there's a lot of symmetry.
Right.
So, a lot of people already know on a bass guitar, one finger, I have the same fingering for a scale for all, a major scale in all 12 keys is all the same fingering.
Right.
So on a horn, that's not the case. Or on piano, that's not the case. So that's a great convenience. So once I learn it, I have a pattern, I use that same pattern for all the keys. That applies for chords and for scales, extended triads, everything. So I want to merge the sound of the interval. I want to know da is a minor third. I want to know that da da looks like that on two strings and da da looks like that on one string, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I need to be able to call what that interval is, the minor third. So you have one minor second, major second, minor third, major third, 4 augmented 4, flat 5, 5. You go up to 12, right? If I can associate the sound with each and know what that interval is, how to label it, and the shape, you get to a point where I could see da 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 da, and I could see it on the bass neck. I don't even need my bass. If a melody's playing in the car, I could see the melody on the bass neck without having a bass in my hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's very useful when you're trying to learn unison licks and you can't read music, right? So all these things, that's how I've navigated my way through, and it's more of like a folk music approach because now anybody can do it without having to learn to read music, but they are going to have to learn uh, this 12 tone harmony, this music theory, which is just basic math.
Mm-hmm.
Like just it's not that I'm like, if you can count to 12, you can do this. you know? So especially when we're using mostly diatonic, which is a 7-note scale, or pentatonic, which is 5, we're not even going to all 12 most of the time. So I tell everybody, like, you could do this because to me, like spiritually, mystically, this is a fun thing that everybody can participate in.
Sure.
Ornette Coleman had this beautiful quote. He said, "I want to eliminate the caste system of music."
Mm-hmm.
So well, not to be a dig against India, but this hierarchy. Because he's like everybody should be free. Everybody should be able to participate in this.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I think when we all sing along and
Yeah.
grab a tambourine, grab something to beat on, grab a stick, play along. I love that, and that's how all the folk music here are, and it's a fun thing. Like you go to a bluegrass festival, and most of the people that came to the concert brought instruments with them, and they're all jamming with each other in the parking lot, or we're all over the place. There's like all these jam sessions going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's just great. It's such a community thing in Black church when, everybody sings. Yeah, you got the best singer and they're going to take the lead. You got Aretha Franklin, she's going to get the lead, but everybody's singing. And a lot of those cats, they come up, they're like, oh, I started on drums. And then they found whatever instrument they settled on. It's like, that's what I'm trying to do with the app, like just like bring it in,
Lovely.
make a pathway for everybody to be able to play. Uh, and then if they get into like higher forms like jazz, you're gonna want to go to school for that. I'm not a jazz player on bass. I could play it on drums
Yeah.
much better. But that's a whole language as with, classical Indian music like that requires some formal
Yeah.
study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Indian classical music, yeah, it can be a little rigid sometimes, like you said. And there are a lot of modern musicians. This is a person by the name T.M. Krishna, who's a very reputed Indian Carnatic singer.
Ooh, yes,
And
please.
yeah, so this person has tried a very progressive approach in terms of you did speak a little bit about caste getting into the whole idea, right? So he's sort of trying to break down all those stereotypes in terms
Ah,
of, yeah, he's a great guy. You should totally check him out. His name is TM Krishna. Yeah.
please text me or email me
I'll do that. I'll do that. Yeah,
the
we could connect on
yeah.
Instagram. We could definitely connect on Instagram if you use that.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'll do that. Yeah, sorry, I didn't have a chance to do the shout out video,
that's all
but I
right.
will connect with you on Instagram because yeah, I'm always into the
Yeah,
singers especially, and I want my it helps hook my kids
yeah,
easier too, the
it does.
voice,
Yeah,
so I'm very interested to hear that. And I'm always thankful for there's always people coming along and revolutionizing,
right,
like take it like Zakir, and
right.
uh, man, so many great Indian musicians. Debashish,
Yeah.
uh, man, yeah, tons.
I'd be happy to share a lot of. I also represent a lot. I manage a lot of Indian independent artists. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, so I would love to share their music across with you. I have a couple of interesting artists in my roster. So I'd be happy to
Please
share
turn
their
me
music
on.
along with you. Yeah,
Please. That's where I can always use more inspiration.
certainly. Now let's move to a slightly interesting segment of our interview. So I'm going to shoot across 5 questions to you, which is the last segment of our agenda today.
Sure.
You'll have to be very spontaneous with your answers. You can't really think much. All right.
Okay, no thinking aloud. All right. I get
All
I
right.
get put on that spot a lot.
The first question for you, Oteil. What is that one song that always makes you cry?
Mm. Uh Man, there's a couple. Um there's an instrumental tune. I'm not even sure of the name of it, but it's on this album by Pat Metheny, Jaco Pastorius, and Bob
Oh
Moses
wow. Okay.
called Bright Size Life.
Right.
Um, and there's this one tune on there. It's a very, very slow song. Um, there's many, many beautiful songs on
Mhm.
that record, and I should be shot for not knowing it. But it's almost like the title. I just go to it sometimes, and then in very, very deep times, there's this one song by Reverend James Cleveland called "I Walk with God." That when my brother passed away, I just went back to it. Uh, um, and then I don't know. I'll go with those two for right now.
Mhm.
There's a lot of melancholy stuff. I love Joni Mitchell, man.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, um, a case of you.
Yeah.
I could drink. I could drink a case of you. Yeah, that makes me tear up right now. Joni Mitchell,
Johnny Mitchell. Yeah.
and she's. I mean, I was into Blue
Mhm.
before. I didn't know she played with Jocko
Yeah.
and Pat Metheny and Herbie and Wayne. I was like, there's you probably don't remember this. There's a old place called Circuit City.
Okay.
Anyway, they had the big thing called a laser disc where it was
Mhm.
like this huge TV. It looked like a movie screen, and the
Wow.
the laser it was a video, but it looked like an album, like a vinyl LP. And I walked into a Circuit City, and they had this big thing, which was a new technology back then. And there was Joni Mitchell with Jaco Pastorius, Pat Metheny, Michael Brecker, Don Elias, I believe Lyle Mays, and I was like, my brain just fried. I was like, wait a minute, she plays with like all my heroes, And then I found out about Jira and Don Juan's Reckless Daughter, and I just lost my mind again because I was already a huge fan. But that album, Blue, just anything off that will just make me cry. Anything off that album, it
Right.
still gets me.
On the contrary, what is your favorite guilty pleasure song?
um, what is my favorite guilty pleasure song? Probably jamming out with some of the crap that my kids. I shouldn't call it crap. See, there we go with being judgmental. Um, Probably right now the Pokemon song. Gotta catch 'em all, because it's like, I do stuff with my kids, and I get just like, come on, take the ride with him, man. Get into it. And when I see how he'll like jump down and start dancing, and like he busted out a tooth doing some dance moves. So I would start to learn the lyrics to songs that they really like that I really didn't like, so I could sing it with them. And then I started to like it, like the Pokemon song. I'm starting to get into it, and I think maybe I should record it with him, like in the music room. So maybe I'll go with the Pokemon song. I also have a Angry Pikachu T-shirt that I got that I'm gonna wear on stage.
Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely.
I'm glad you asked me that question. I never would have thought of that.
Great. Uh, what are some of the most fond memories you've had with John Mayer as a person? Like something that comes to the top of your head.
One of the funny to me, it's just it just tickles me.
Mhm.
Uh, Maybe I could show you. Oh, this is a good one. I can actually show you.
Mhm.
If it doesn't show his phone number, let me make sure, because he texted me this, and man, I got such a good laugh out of this. It was really funny. I think I can show you. Oh, I gotta re-download the picture. Okay. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but anyway, so right before this tour, he
Uh-huh.
texts me. He's like, "Hey, I ordered he goes, how about this one? I ordered a bunch of camping gear for the summer post tour, and it came on a pallet. Here's what was written on it." So I guess he's going camping somewhere after the tour, and he showed. I don't know if you could see it. And so I
That's
texted him back. I was
hilarious.
like, "Hey, that's what would usually happen to me, right? Like I would order some camping gear, and they'd be like, "Hey, can you tell John Mayer we said hi?" I was like, "That's weird." So that was funny. But he's a really John is one of these like
Yeah,
hyper intelligent
yeah,
people. And he gets
do that.
really into stuff like his watches. Like he can explain stuff to you about how this incredibly intricate watch works, and that you've lost me.
Yeah.
But it's really beautiful to it's been so fun to take this journey with him, because we both came to the Grateful Dead very late.
Mhm.
And so, for instance, one thing that's really cool, when um, Long Strange Trip came out, that documentary that's like 4 parts, it was super long. It came out while we were on the road, and the director, set up so we could see it, before everyone else saw it. And so we were watching this, me and Jeff Chimenti, who's the keyboard player,
Yeah.
who's been around like in this world like as long as I've been on the scene, with the Allman Brothers. We came around. He started playing with Rat Dog right
Yeah.
back then. So me, him, and John are all watching this documentary, which goes back to the beginning. It's so long, goes through all these eras, and like well before the end of it, we're texting each other like, "God, can you believe we're part of this thing that's so it changed all of America, like, and all of the world, and ripple effect." Um, and to be able to share that with him, this kind of journey, as people coming to it late, the average deadhead can educate me about the Grateful Dead in innumerable ways. And so every deadhead I meet, I listen to, I talk to them, and I know John is getting that too, and sharing that with him and with Kameni that whole time, like during that movie, was pretty magical, man. He's a really sweet guy and very thoughtful, a great person to work for, and a great person to work with. It's been, something no one else could ever explain, the like what the members of the Grateful Dead share. Like, who could explain it? You had to be there. But us coming from the outside at this point and then being, you know, critical to it, it puts a lot of responsibility on you. You're like, it's like taking care of someone's child. Right. So I guess that time in my life to do that.
Do convey my regards to him whenever you get to see him, and
Absolutely.
I'd also love to have him on my show someday.
I'll tell him for sure.
Yeah,
I'll
be
tell
great.
him.
That'll be great. What was your favorite cartoon while growing up? Did you have a favorite?
I've been trying to think about that because now I've been going back and showing my son. I can find him on YouTube, like Speed Racer.
Oh, wow. That was a great one. My favorite too.
Yeah, but I think my favorite probably just had to be Bugs Bunny because of Mel Blanc. I often think about what must it have been like for his mother, like to hear like 5 people in the other room knowing there's only him. I bet that started kind of early. And just so much of the adult humor, you know, I look back at it now and I don't show Nigel as much of that because it's so violent. I guess you can't really escape that. Just have to accept he's got the testosterone now. He's into just we don't allow video games with guns, and somehow he's just fascinated with guns. I'm like, it's just testosterone. But yeah, Bugs Bunny, and then I try to show him Speed Racer. It's just a cartoon called Super Chicken, which I thought, and he loves the theme for it. Super Chicken. It's so ridiculous. So that was a little fun period trying to think of all the most ridiculous cartoons that I used to watch. And then some are just like, you go back and even like the old, like really old Bugs Bunnies and really old Mickey Mouse, but it's some very racist stuff. I'm like, oh wow, turn that off. Like whoa. I did, but I got up to it, before it was after it wasn't after black and white and all that,
Yeah.
Black and white television. But yeah, I'll go with Bugs Bunny.
Okay. I have one last question for you. This is more of a custom in all of my interviews, and I ask this question to everyone I talk to. Down in the distant horizon, what would you want to be remembered as?
A great husband and father. That's really it, man. All the rest of the stuff, I I did not expect to have children, and I did not expect to get married again, and I had said definitively that I would not, and we see how that worked out. Fortunately, I met my wife Jess, and she has been such a huge reason for me to want to be a better man. She really holds me accountable. If a man can find a woman that they trust enough to let them bust their chops, you know, then you found something more precious than $1 trillion. And I found that with her, and she's an incredible woman, and an incredible wife, and an incredible mother, and working on these little humans with her is the most difficult, wondrous, amazing thing by far that I've ever had the privilege to participate in on this planet. And that's the thing that matters to me the most, is that I don't screw these kids up with my crap. And or even though I know I'm going to to a certain extent, we can't help that, but that I give them visible pathways out of that, so that they know how to get to love and compassion and the mystical things that I think that are gonna matter at some point when the chips are really down, and even things like music won't help, right?
Yeah.
Or may not be able to if you can't let music help you, right? So that's the most important thing to me, is these humans that we brought here, and we're releasing out into the world. It matters what we do right now.
In the interest of time, I'd definitely like to thank you for tuning in and making this
Thank
possible.
you.
And
Thank you
this
so much.
interview is also going to be aired on the radio. It's going to be aired on Big FM, Shillong, and Aizawl in the northeastern
Nice.
parts of India. And this is also going to be part of my audio podcast series, which is all set for launch. It's going to be called Stalwarts of Music with Aditya Veera. That's what it's going to be called. And
I'm
yeah,
happy to be included in that company.
it's probably one of my longest interviews till date. Interestingly,
I talk a lot. Sorry about that.
no, it's in terms of the connect, the emotional connect that we had. I think it was great. I had a great time. I learned a lot of new things from you, and I'm sure
Thank you.
being a student of music, I'm gonna apply a lot of this in my personal musical pursuit as well.
Thank you so much. Because I love to talk about this stuff. Yeah, that's why I started my podcast. Shout out to
Yeah.
Comes a Time podcast.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted to talk about these spiritual things.
Right.
Friends dying all the time. Just recently, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking. My father just passed away. Like I don't know how I process these things without.
I'm so sorry about that. My heartfelt condolences to your family. I
Thank
hope you're
you. I
holding up well.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
He was very old. He was 91. He saw it all, man. He had a good run, and he went peacefully and quickly and in no pain. So it was such a blessing that he was able to go in that way. But without these, it's so great to be able to talk about mystical stuff with people. I don't want to just talk about the nuts and bolts of music. It's only so interesting without the other part. So thank you for that, because I really appreciate that. And I do. There's my email here says oteil@jointheozone.com.
Okay.
So it's either VIP jointheozone.com or jointheozonevip.com, or just jointheozone.com.
What I'll do is
You'll find it.
Yeah, I'll pin it on my Instagram. I'll just find it and then I'll pin it on my Instagram for all the viewers and the listeners out here.
Yes, and we talk about the philosophical and mystical stuff in the Ozone too. We have those sections in there.
Yeah.
Because I think it's necessary. All my heroes have this incredible emotional, spiritual content to it. And so that's important, and it can't be just written on paper.
Sure.
Yeah. So thank you for allowing me my full expression.
Yeah.
Namaskar.
Thank you once again. Feel free to hit me up anytime you're in India. I'd love to show you other parts of India.
What part are you in?
I live in Bangalore, which is in the southern part of India.
So that's not close to Delhi, right? I think that's where we flew in.
Right.
Yeah, but we're going to try to go to different part. I know it's a very big country.
Yeah.
But I need to go to the southern part, because I was all in the northern part.
Northern part. Yeah.
Yeah. But we were only there for 2 weeks. But I will. I'll try to find you. And thank you.
For sure. Thank you so much once again. We can stay connected. You can find me on my Instagram, which goes by @ADIX70. You can find me there, and do stay in touch. It was lovely talking to you.
Absolutely. You too. Bless you.
All right then. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.